Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today is Halloween, so I really do hope that you guys enjoy whatever your plans are, whether you have children and you're taking them out trick-or-treating, whether you're going trick-or-treating yourself, who knows, whatever they are tonight, enjoy it. I personally love Halloween. I love decorating the house all spooky and creepy and watching scary films. It's awesome. So whatever your plans are tonight, please just stay safe, okay? Today's case tells a story of betrayal of best friends and revolves around a character that was birthed on the internet and today has grown into something quite large that nobody really expected, and it is used to frighten people. This case will do just that, to be quite honest, and it is the case of Payton Leutner. Payton Leutner was born in 2002 to parents Joe and Stacy in the US. Her childhood was pretty much a normal one. She was just a sweet brown-haired girl growing up in the town of Waukesha in Wisconsin. I like how confidently I said that because it probably is completely wrong, so I apologize if that is the case. It was said that she always tried to find the good in people, and I mean, in this case, I guess where there was none. Well, it's not necessarily true. This case is a bit more complex than sort of it may first seem. By the fourth grade of school, she met a girl called Morgan Geyser. I apologize if I've said that wrong. Now, Morgan was sat alone, and Payton felt like trying to be she didn't want anyone to feel left out and be lonely, and so she thought nobody should have to sit alone, and so she went on and sat next to her, and they became friends from that. It was said that Morgan was a ton of fun. She had this wild imagination, which proved really well for the games that they used to play. And, they just bounced off each other. Morgan was generally a really happy girl. She was very bright for her age, and they did become best friends. They both enjoyed similar things, playing video games. They had a shared passion for science fiction and fantasy and things like that. And they would just do things like normal girls would do. They would have sleepovers, they would draw together, they would go play outside together, play hide and seek, things like that. Just normal childhood things. As they reached 6th grade in school, Morgan then introduced another girl into the fold. Her name was Anissa Weir. Again, if I've said that wrong, I am sorry. Now, apparently Payton didn't actually really like Anissa too much, but Morgan really seemed to. So she hung out because Morgan was her best friend and Morgan liked Anissa, and so she just hung out with them anyway. Payton did kind of feel a little bit like she was being replaced though, because Morgan was just getting closer and closer to Anissa, and Payton felt more and more pushed out. Anissa, once more, was also really into fantasy and things like that, and she began telling Morgan and Payton these stories of a faceless man. It was something that she had read on the internet, and she actually believed that it was a real thing, like it was true. Essentially, it was like a boogeyman, really tall, slim guy that had no face and that would snatch up children. Payton really didn't like hearing these stories. They scared her. At the time, she was only 12. She didn't like hearing them. Hearing of children getting snatched by a faceless man was pretty scary to a kid, and so she didn't like it at all. She goes to her mum, asks for clarification. Her mum tells her that it is not real, it's just a ghost story. Don't worry. So she goes back to the girls who believed that it was true and tells them that her mum said it's just a ghost story, and it's not true, but I guess they don't really believe her. They were really obsessed with it at that point, and even though Payton didn't want to hear it, they still carried on. She told them that she didn't want to listen to it anymore, but they just ignored her. They just carried on. They would go online, they would look into this faceless man and search him up on the internet, and all these stories would come up. And they literally thought it was real. This was not a story to these girls. This faceless man was real. So as time goes on, we reach Morgan's 12th birthday, and the girls are all planning like a get together. This was on the 30th of May in 2014. 30th, if you didn't get that, not the 13th. They decided that they were going to go roller skating, they were going to, do all these things, ice cream, fun, whatever, and they were going to spend the day together, and then later on at night, they would have this sleepover. Normally, with the sleepovers, they planned on doing all-nighters, stay up as long as you can. It's super exciting to do that when you're a kid. And when they actually got back to have this sleepover, Payton felt it was really strange because Morgan just wanted to go to bed straight away. And it was strange because she was assuming they were going to do this all night like they had planned. But now that Morgan's saying that she was tired and she wanted to go to sleep. So She thought it was odd, but, you know, you don't really think too much of it, and so they just went to sleep. The next morning, we're now on the 31st, Payton wakes up to find the girls are nowhere. So she goes downstairs, she sees that they're both huddled around the computer. She asks them what they're doing. They just completely blank her, and eventually they do come off the PC. They have some food, they play some games, do a few different things before Morgan decides that they should all go to the park together. And, you know, they think that that's a really good idea. She goes and asks her mother, who tells her that she actually can go. Normally, she would have an escort for her, an adult or something like that, but she's 12. She wanted to give her a bit of freedom. Both her friends were around, and the park was literally in walking distance. It wasn't far at all. She tells them that they need to stick together and, you know, not separate, and that they can go. What could go wrong, right? Right? So off they go. Anissa suggests a game of hide and seek whilst they are there. Now, I believe there's a wooded area close by, and they decide to do it in there. Morgan is going to be the seeker, so she goes off counting, and the other two girls were left to hide. So Anissa suggests to Payton, I've got a brilliant idea. Why don't you lay on the ground, get twigs, leaves, whatever, put it all over you, and camouflage yourself, and you will never ever be found. What a great hiding spot. Payton thinks, wow, that's a brilliant idea. So she does just that. She gets on the floor, she begins covering herself with all of this stuff, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, appears Morgan standing over her, and she has a knife in hand. She attacks Payton very quickly. I don't even believe that she literally had time to move. She stabs her 19 times. And Anissa was either just stood there watching, egging her on, or holding her down, depending on which source you read and wish to believe. Just a quick side note here, these girls were 12. They were all 12 years old at this point. 12 years old, and they are plotting to kill their best friend, stabbing her 19 times. It is just crazy. Once the attack had taken place, the girls leave. They leave Payton lying on the ground, bleeding, leaving her in the woods to die. But amazingly, she does not die. She survives the attack. She finds the will to live, the strength out of nowhere. She gets herself up. She's grabbing from tree to tree to support herself. She has to get out in the open where somebody can find her. She eventually gets to a grass verge where it's near a main road, so she's hoping that somebody finds her there. Again, she's like drifting in and out. Her vision's blurred. She can't really see anything. Her body's working so hard to keep itself alive that there's not much else that she can give. So she lies down on this grass in the hopes that somebody finds her. And somebody does. It was there at the end of Big Bend Road that a cyclist is just minding his own business, driving down that main road, and he spots her and rings 911. Payton was in and out of consciousness in the ambulance as she was rushed to hospital. Luckily, she was actually able to tell them who had done this to her, and then she goes into emergency surgery, and they are shocked by what they find, really, because the injuries that she had suffered, they were surprised that she was actually able to move at all. The will of this girl to live was just amazing. She had wounds on her arms and her legs, but luckily those had only damaged soft tissue. Not that that's not painful, because obviously it is. But she had two major ones in her torso that had hit her major organs. One had actually cut through her diaphragm, damaging her liver and stomach, whilst the other one had narrowly missed her heart. And it literally missed her major artery by less than a millimeter. I kid you not, the width of one human hair is what it would have had to been across to miss this artery. That tiny little bit across, and she would have died. She was amazingly lucky and amazingly strong and brave. She survived a 6-hour surgery and woke up feeling frightened, essentially, because, you know, she was wondering whether the police had got them, where they were, whether they were going to come and get her again. But as it turned out, the police actually already had them in custody before Payton even told them it was her. It was them, I guess. We'll get more into that in a second. Payton's recovery was very long and painful, and they actually gave her a whiteboard to write on because she was intubated. She literally had a tube into her lungs helping her breathe because she could not do it alone, and so the way that she would communicate was with this whiteboard. Her recovery was very difficult, both physically and emotionally, and After the attack, she would sleep in the bed with her mum because she did not want to be alone at night. And to this day, she sleeps with a broken pair of scissors under her pillow. So obviously, there are lots of scars surrounding this case. I mean, luckily, she didn't lose her life. She survived, but, you know, it's still traumatic. It still leaves so many scars, mentally and physically. Going back to them already having the girls, a police car was actually driving down the road and they spotted these girls. It was about 5 miles away from where Payton was attacked and they were covered in blood. So they figured, well, it's best to stop them and, you know, ask them about it. These 2 teenagers, not even teenagers yet, covered in blood. We better stop them. So they did. The girls tell the police that they were actually on their way to Wisconsin's Nicollet National Forest, which actually wasn't that far away. Anissa wasn't doing much talking at all. The police noticed that she seemed pretty shaken up for some reason and was shaking. Police asked if they had anything on them, if there were anything in the pockets, whatever, and that is where they found the knife. Anissa finally begins talking and starts going on about how he can teleport and how he can read minds. Obviously, the police have no idea what they're going on about. It made no sense to them, and so they ask her what she's going on about. They don't really get anywhere fast. A lot more nonsense comes out, but then eventually some truths do come out. They eventually go on to say how they had to kill their friend Payton because the Slender Man had told them to do it. So yes, this faceless man that they were obsessed with was the Slender Man, in case you hadn't already guessed. And I assume that many of you know who Slenderman is, right? Well, in case you didn't, he was created on this online forum called Something Awful back in 2009. It was actually done for a Photoshop contest. A guy called Eric Nutston actually created an image of Slenderman. The forum wanted people to create like a Photoshop of something creepy, something spooky, paranormal even, something like that, that would just, I don't know, creep people out. But they also wanted it to look real. And so what he did was he took these photos, 2 photos in black and white, he took of children. And then he photoshopped a image of what he created of Slenderman in the back. He also ended up putting a quote on it. I don't know what this quote was, whether it was date and time or I don't know what it was. But he put this quote on it to try and make it look more authentic and more real because apparently if photos have quotes on, that means that they must be real. Go figure. So, from that little Photoshop contest, Slenderman went massive. He blew up. It went huge. It went viral. Video games were made of him. Films were made of him. You've got YouTubers all over the internet playing these video games and recording it and doing reaction videos to these little short films that people were making. And it was freaky. It was made to scare people. And people came up with all of these stories and the imagination just sort of blew up with Slenderman. And this creepypasta just ended up reaching like so many people. Some of which thought that these stories were so in-depth and so detailed that surely they must be true, right? They must be real. That's what people believed. That is what these girls believed. Well, Payton didn't, but Anissa and Morgan. So back to the case, the girls were actually on the way to the forest because that is where Slenderman lived. He lived in a mansion there and they were going to go and join him. They truly, honestly believed that this was real. That they had done this terrible crime to protect their families because if they didn't, Slenderman would kill their families instead. And that he would take them away from them. Then it actually came out that they had been planning this for months, which is really scary. They initially planned it to happen on Morgan's birthday party when they were at sleepover. You know, when they wanted to go to bed early? Well, yeah, they were planning on killing Payton in a sleep then. But then they decided that they would do it the next day instead. And I mean, you know, who knows what, she might have actually lost her life if they tried doing it at that day. So, you know, it may have been a good thing that they waited because then that enabled her to be seen by someone. Who knows? It's just speculation on my front, but that decision may have saved her life. It's actually really messed up when you think that these were 12 and they had been planning it for months, planning to kill their best friend for months. Police also found these sketches and this list that one of the girls had written. Do you notice the knife marks down on it? So the girls were obviously facing charges, and due to the nature of their attack, it was actually decided that they would be tried as adults even though they were only 12. Now that was a massive thing. It threw up a lot of opinions, a lot of conspiracy against it because they were children and they were being tried as adults. So obviously there's going to be a lot of opinion about that. Whilst incarcerated, Morgan began exhibiting strange behaviour. She began doing little things at first, but then it eventually blew up into her just full on talking to Slender Man in a cell, like he was right in front of her. She began having delusions and hallucinations, things like that. She was eventually transferred to a mental facility where they would keep her for a few months. They would do 24-hour observations on her, things like that, to try and assess her mental health. And that is where she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was early onset schizophrenia, which, might I add, her father also suffered from the age of 14, and as a young adult he was hospitalized himself due to it, apparently. The thing here was, though, because it was really early onset, the judge deemed her fit to stand trial. About a year and a half after the attack, Morgan was finally moved to a mental hospital and put on medication for schizophrenia. Anissa Weiser was sentenced to 25 years to life, which was an intermediate sentence where she would face at least 3 years in a psychiatric institute, followed after that by communal supervision until the age of 37. She accepted a plea deal and pled guilty, and then that was when she was facing at least 3 years in that mental hospital. In September of 2016, just a few weeks after Anissa had accepted her plea deal, Morgan also accepted a plea deal, and she also agreed to be placed into a mental institution instead of a normal prison. She was given a 40-year sentence there, which is actually the maximum term allowed, which I found pretty crazy. After 3.5 years, Anissa was released. After petitioning, she was no longer a threat to society or anyone else. She will be monitored. She has a lot of terms that she must abide by. I don't know what that word is. You know what I mean? Like, she's not allowed on social media at all. And there's just other terms that she must do as well. But she was released on the 30th of September in 2021. Morgan Geyser will periodically have the opportunity to petition for her release too in the future. This was a very tragic case surrounding mental health, and my heart goes out to all of the families involved in this case, all 3 of the families. I'm just so thankful that Payton did not lose her life in all this. She's now around 19, I believe. She's going to college, trying to move on with her life. She did an interview, I believe 2 years ago, where she stated that she finds it very hard to trust people, to make new friends, because she keeps them at arm's length for a very long time, and who can blame her? She even struggled to trust members of her own family. She's just such an amazing, brave woman whose will to live was just absolutely fantastic, and she got out of that situation. She forced herself to move, and as a result of that, she survived. I honestly hope that she finds everything in life that she wants to. I believe she's looking to become a medic, which is obviously an amazing career after all her ordeal. That is what she wants to do. And I just hope that, you know, after such a horrific time in her life, that she just gets everything she wants, everything she aspires to do. She also had a bit of advice regarding bad friendships that I would like to share with you, which she says she wished she would have known at the age of 12. She says, get out before something bad happens to you. Even if you're guilted into a friendship like she felt she was, if you've been friends with them for years, if you feel something is bad, get out there while you still can, because you never know what may happen. And I wholeheartedly agree. Just as a little quick side note of this case, you know, if anybody of the younger age or more impressionable people, you know, more gullible or whatever you want to, whatever word you want to use, term, Slenderman is not real. Just to clarify that point, if you are watching this video, he is not real, okay? There have been so many cases surrounding Slenderman. They did it because of Slenderman. They thought it was real. There's not just this one. There's a few of them. Slenderman isn't even that old, considering, really. And so many people think he's real. He's not, okay? He's just not. It's a story that somebody made up, and it just blew up, and lots of people have added to it, and that is it. But yeah, that is the end of this case. If you enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the attack on Payton Leutner. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!